an introduction to many things related to data entities, so I could call it overview also. I'm a technical lead at JJ Food Service, a food wholesale company in the UK, and I'm the owner of DuxVision ERP Consulting, where we work with a small AX technical team and helping out different projects. I studied IT engineering and recently finished MBA also. I'm working with AX from 2003 as a trade and logistics consultant and developer and technical architect. In the recent years, I'm more concentrating on the technical part, but at JJ, no one is only technical. Everyone does functional things also. So I'm living in Hungary, and I lived in different places in the world before. I lived in Dubai, and I lived in Cambridge, and also in Ghent. And I like doing sports. I was playing football, I did Thai boxing, and now as I'm closer to 40, I stopped doing these dangerous things, and now I'm running and do fitness. I will talk about data entities, starting with an overview. Then I will show the data management workspace in AX. I will demo how to create a data entity. I will talk about OData. I will also show how to create a composite data entity. I will tell some lessons that we learned while creating entities. And maybe I will talk about Azure Data Lake also, if I will have time. So let's start with the data entity overview. Before, so in AX 2012, we had application integration framework, where we had two types of AIF classes. There were the document services and the custom services. Custom services are just X++ code that you can call from outside of AX. And this is still possible in D365, but custom services are query-based services that you can also call in AX 2012 from outside of AX, but that is deprecated, and we need to use the data entities, and data entities have much more capabilities. We already had something like data entities in AX 2012. It was part of the DIXF or DMF functionality, but now in D365 it has more functions and it is part of the AOT, so you have a separate node for data entities. Another view of the data entities. You can see that the data entity can be called through OData, which can be also an Excel add-in that is using OData feed. Or we have the data management workspace and platform. It's a file-based integration. So the OData way is the synchronous, and the data management UI way is the asynchronous integration. And because of that, I would say that the data management platform is for migration. OData is not for data migration. If you studied IT engineering, you may have heard about normalization. Then you reduce the redundancy and the dependency in the database. We have first normal form, second, third, and here on the middle of the screen, you can see that, for example, a customer has many data, and as a result of normalization, the data structure is here in this example 4 tables, and in reality even more. So this is how it is stored in the database, which has many advantages. It is performance and the size of the database, but person doesn't look at customer like this structure. It's the database, it's the technical structure. But for me, customer is just customer, and its address is its property, its name is also, its electronic address, everything is just customer for me. And that's called denormalization when we go back to this more human-friendly view. And we don't consider the structure of the tables. Whatever connects to customer, that is part of the customer entity. So another view of this is the data entity use cases. I have already told that there is synchronous and asynchronous integration. Synchronous is the OData, and asynchronous is the data management. Data migration is also the data management, and there is the business intelligence use case of data entities. So you can build Power BI and other business intelligence techniques on data entities. So I mentioned data management already more times. So let's see more about it. So on the UI, you have a workspace in AX. It looks similar to the screen that I'm showing. You have import-export functionality of data. I will do a demo of it. You have the list of the data entities that's coming from AX. And you have settings like data task automation and different things. So if, for example, I would like to create an export job, then I click the export tile here, and I can select the entities that are in AX. For example, here I selected vendor invoice header and vendor invoice line. After that, I click export, and the export starts. I will do a demo of this. So these two data entities that were on the screen are related to pending vendor invoices. It's a functionality of AX, which can be found under accounts payables, invoices, and pending vendor invoices. So there are 3 entities actually that are related to this. I will use 2 of them, the header and the line. There can be the document attachments also used. So here in AX, we have the data management tile. And the import and export can be seen here. So as I said, when I click export, I can choose between data entities that are defined in AX. I will also do a presentation on where they are defined and how they are defined. But now let's just say that we have data entities in AX. They are standard, and actually we have a lot already delivered by Microsoft in the standard product. So I would say this is the FinOps Saturday demo. job. This is an export. I would like to generate the data package, and I would like to add 2 data entities. So first one is vendor invoice header. Here I can select different file formats to export to. There is Excel, there is XML, and in this example I will use CSV. We can say full push or incremental push, and we can select all fields or only the importable fields or auto report. Let's say I select importable fields now. Add. So this line will appear here. Yes, it is. And now I can select the line also. Vendor invoice line. Also CSV and importable fields. So now these 2 are added. I can close the dialog window, and I have defined to export these 2 tables. Let's see what is in it. So here is the vendor invoice page. I have created 1 header, so it has 1 line. I will not open it now, but soon. So I'm exporting this. If I click export, a job is scheduled, and in a developer environment, which I'm using for the demo, it is using Azure storage emulator, and it is uploading there. So I can download the file, or I can download the whole package. Let's download the whole package. And investigate what is inside. So I will extract this. I can find 4 files inside. 2 are the actual data that we exported, and the other 2 are the definition of the data and the package. This will be useful soon when I continue my presentation. Now let's just see the 2 data files. So in the header, it can be opened by Excel, but I will do it in CSV now. So you can see the PT2 invoice that I've shown before. I will modify this because we will import it to pending invoices. And let's say it is Peter Linux Saturday is the comment. So this was one of the files. You could see the header, and there was only 1 record. And let's see the other one also. This should be the data from the lines. As I said, there is only 1 line. You can see the labels of the fields, and you can see the data from the fields. So because I have these 2 files, I can just say send to compressed file, and I can create now an import. So if I click import, enums Saturday import and if I select the file, that I've just created, because of the other two files that were not the data but the structure, AX should figure out what's inside and will create the lines here in this part of the screen once it's done with examining the structure. So you can see I have the vendor invoice header and vendor invoice line here with the new data that we inserted in the data file, and I can click import. So this is running now. I can come back an hour later if it's a huge file, or because it was a small, just to be able to do the presentation. I wish this time was enough, so I click refresh here. Yes, it says it was successful. So let's now see what is here in the pending invoices form. There was PT2, and hopefully we have PT3 now. So, and inside PT3, we will have this one line also, which I didn't show. You can see Peter FinOps Saturday is here and PT3. So this was how we import and export data. But there are many things inside data management, and this can be automated with Power Automate, and there are many opportunities to work with these. Another thing that I wanted to show here is the list of data entities. So, as I said, there are many that comes with the standard product, and you can see that it's a long list. We are still at letter A. So really you can find a data entity for most of your situations. So let's see how it looks in the developer environment. If I go to the developer environment and I add new object to my project, I have a new node here called data entities. So I select that one, I give it a name. Then there will be a data entity wizard displayed, and I can fill up some information. For example, if I want this to be available for OData, then I click it is public, and I can say I would like to use staging table or not, and what should be the security impact, what is the privilege, and the view and the maintain privilege name. So it's a wizard. It's not the only way. It's one way to create data entities. You can start from creating the data, the table, and then right click in the AOT, and there are different options, but this is one and frequently used for beginning. So on the next page of this wizard, you will see possible data sources and fields from that data source. And when you click finish, you will see something like this. And you can see that this data entity has a data source where you can put more tables together. So it's like a query also, but with limitations. For example, only inner joins can be in this data source, so you cannot add outer join and maybe outer, but for sure you cannot use not exist and exist joins. So here is the data source and here is the field. So it is quite similar to a view that we had in AX 2012. And I think in the database in SQL, it is created as a view, but it's a writable view. So with a data entity, you can, as you have seen my demo, you can import data also. The naming convention is add entity at the end, and then use the same way, prefix and the conceptual name. Yeah, and you can use these data entities just like a view in your X++ code also. So you can say, if my entity is called Jed Peter entity, then I can say select star from Jed Peter entity, and it will return all the data that the query defines and these fields. Okay, so let's see it in the developer environment. So if I go to the AOT and go to data model, I can see a new node called data entities. And here I can see a lot of data entities like you've seen from the UI also. And if I just open one, for example, then this is what I've shown on the slide, that in the data source we have tables, and it's a query that's defined relations between, so it's just a query, and the fields of the data entity are defined here. So that's what we see when we query this data entity. Also, it has code. For example, post-load method is one important one. There is no example for it here, but I will show soon. And so yes, this is how it looks. And if I create it, then I say right-click, add new item. Select data entity. Let's say entity. So now the wizard should appear. Here you can see I need to select the primary data source. So let's say it's the cast table. Of course, there is a standard entity for cast table, but this is just for demo. And you can see this will be the OData feed. And this will be the name of the staging table and the privileges. So if I go to the next page of the wizard, if this is the speed, then maybe I will need to skip the demos. So this is why I had the slides already containing these steps, because if it will be, so it's not a very fast developer environment. If this will be the speed, then I need to stop the demo, but I'm still hoping. Okay, I will start talking about the next thing, and we'll come back to here. So once you have created your data entity, you can still add not only the fields from the data source, but you can add some kind of virtual fields also. If you worked with views in AX 2012, you already know the computed column. So it is there for the data entities also. And it is very similar to that. The way how you used it in views and how you defined it. So it is very similar. There is another thing for the data entities called virtual field. And this is normally created just as a virtual field. In the right-click menu, you add it to your data entity, and you don't define where from the query the data comes. But when the entity is exported, there is a post-load method that's executed, and there you can write your own logic. What to do with this virtual field? For example, always put Dynamics 365 string in this field. So you will have a column where your virtual field will always contain Dynamics 365. Okay, it's not very useful, but you can do a very complicated business logic here, like adding together strings or finding data from somewhere else. But this is similar to display methods on tables and forms. So you have to think about the performance impact also, because this is executed record by record. So saying this, I should highlight that whenever you can, you should prefer computed columns over the X++ code-based virtual field. So my wizard is on the next page. I will unselect all. This was not a good idea, it seems. Okay. So let's say I would like to see just a few fields of this and this table, the account name of the customer, the customer group, and the name. Okay, I don't care about the name now. I could add another data source, and I can add also virtual fields already here. I can do it later also, but as this button is here, let's say I add two virtual fields. They go to the bottom. One will be called virtual field. The name of the other will be computed field. Okay, so I have a lot of options here. I can add more data sources and so on, but I will click Finish now. And while it is creating, we continue. No, this one was faster. So as a result of the wizard, you can see 4 objects were created. One is the data entity itself, which looks this way. I have the cust table and this few fields that I selected, and the 2 virtual fields, and nothing else. I have the 2 security objects, the view and the maintain privilege, and I have the staging table. There is something that's very important for data entities, and it's the label. The label should be unique. When I use the wizard, most of the times a standard label is selected, but if it is not unique, then that will cause issues. I will talk about it later. So let's say this is my entity now. Other than that, I need to define from where these virtual fields are getting the data. So you can see the computed column can be defined this way. So I need to write a method for it. It can be a complicated, or for the example, I will do a less complicated one. And I need to select this computed field, and I need to select the method name. So let's do that. Here is my very easy computed column. So it's defined here. And now for the computed column, I can say is computed field yes, and the method is the one which I have just pasted. Okay, so what about the other field? I said it will be a virtual field. And for that, I can just override the standard postload method. And in there, let's say after the super, I do this. And one more thing that I need to do, I need to tell that this virtual field is actually not a computed field. So after this, my entity should be ready to use. When I use it, it should have data in these 2 fields that are not coming from the data source, and also data in these 3 other fields, but they are not yet in the data entity list that I have shown here. So for that, we need to compile the project and refresh the data entity list. While it is running, I will continue. So I've already demoed the computed field. Here is the demo for, or I've also done the virtual field, but you can imagine that this was a very simple example. You can do very complex things also. I found this, this is not my work, this was done by Uwe Kruger, and I find it very useful. So here you can see that not only this postload method exists, but a lot of methods for data entities. And you can use the data entities for different reasons or purposes. For importing using the data management framework, or exporting, you can use it through OData to create, update, delete. And there are different uses. So it is very complex, and when which methods are running is defined in this view, and it's a very nice job from Uwe Kruger, and I just wanted to show it to you. It should be useful for you also. So let's talk about OData. So in another environment, because this one is still running, the build, in another environment, I'd like to show that this is just the basic link for my environment. And I can get the list of the entities if I add data at the end. So you can see here is a list of the entities that are available for OData communication. This is very long, as you have seen the entity list from the UI from data management. You can expect that this is very long also. So from here, you can find, for example, vendor V2. Okay. Vendors V2. So that was my fault. Vendors V2. Yes. So here you can see that we have an entity like that. So if I call that, I just need to say vendors V2. And I'm getting a JSON representation of the data in the vendors table and whatever is defined in the vendors V2 data entity. Okay, but I can filter it even more. So I've already shown this representation. We are doing this now, we are here. So OData getting JSON or even XML. And this is what we are doing now. Not for data migration that I mentioned already. And these are the possible filters. You can see there is filter, count, order by, skip, top. So let's try out a few of them. For example, I can add that I only would like to see the first 10. No, let's say I would like to. Okay, it's good. So only the first 10, because now I have a lot here, and you can see that. But if I say top 10, then you will see that it stops at the first 10. Okay, what else? I can say I need the first 10, but I only would like to see one field, the vendor account number. So after the top 10 filter, I add select vendor account number. So I can see only the vendor account number other than this tag here. Then I can say, okay, but I only would like to find this particular data where vendor account number equals to USTX001. You can see that it does exist. So I can say, now I queried for all information, not only the vendor account name field. So you can see I have found that one. And you have a lot of options, like I have explained here. This is very useful because it's already known by many professionals who are not coming from AX area. They can already work with it. So this I have already explained. It can give you JSON format. You can select the field list and so on. We are running out of time. So one easy thing that I also wanted to show is that you can use Excel. But hopefully this finished. No, it's not. So if I go to Excel and go to the data, new query from other sources, from OData feed. Here I can add the same thing, feed that I added to the browser. I use it here, and I get a much better readable version of the data. I need to type my password and so on if I'm not doing it the first time, but I have already done that, so it appears here, and I can click load, and then the data will come to Excel. I said top 10, so that it will be faster. We have the title of the field and we have the data. And after it's done, it will look this way. So this is how it looks in browser and Excel. And I have a blog post where I show this, but it's also very common that we use Postman for integration testing. And I describe the details how to set it up in this blog post. But I would like to demo now how it looks when I'm ready with the setup. So let's do the same. Top 10 from the vendors list, and I can see the result here. I can change to XML. I can say top 10 and select only the account number, and I get the thing that I got from the browser. So Postman can be used not only for querying, but also for editing data. To show that and to speed it up, I will use for reference the demonstration of Cruz. She's the next presenter after me, so you will meet her. I used her presentation from another webinar. And so this is how an update looks. You select that you want to update the blocked field to no for a particular record now. And for that, the type of the Postman, the OData query should be patch, and this is the way to do an update. This is how to delete. You need to tell which particular record you would like to delete, and the type should be delete. Again, from Cruz. Thank you for the presentation before. In OData, you can use enums also. There is a namespace for the enums, and this is how you use it. For example, gender unknown or no yes yes. And you have the option to use the EQ and NE, so equal and non-equal, and this is how that looks. You can also add business logic to OData entity, so data entity to use in OData, and that's this is the way it looks. So you define an action attribute, and you do something, any X++ code. Another example. And one more. Here we say delete one-time account. It's again from Cruz. Thank you. The delete one-time account will ask for a customer account and go to cust table, delete that customer. And if after that the exist method returns 0, then our method was successful, so it will return true. So that means that this doesn't exist anymore. So that will be a post, and we call the delete one-time customer action, and we say the cust account is this particular one. And after that, this will be deleted. So because of time pressure, I will not show this, but let's go to composite data entity. Composite data entity is something different. Just to go back here, the build has finished, and now I would be able to refresh the entity list. So here I still don't have it, but if I go to framework parameters, entity settings, I can click refresh entity list. And then my entity that I created here will be present in the data entity list. So composite data entity is also a separate node in the AOT. You can see them here. And it looks easier because you can see that there is the header entity and there is the control. So let's say I have purchase order header and purchase order lines. If I use a simple data entity and I put these two together and I put data from the header and from the lines also in this entity, then the data from the header will be will appear in every record, because this is a simple one line for each record. So I will see, let's say, the purchase order ID many times and the delivery address many times, and then first item number, quantity, second item number, quantity, and so on. This is the simple entity. But if I would like to see only header data once, then one line, the other line, the next line. So in a structured way, like we got used to it in XML, and that's the logical way also, then that I cannot do with a simple data entity. I need to use the composite data entity. So here, let's say this first one is the vendor the when table, and the second one is the when line, the first table, first line. And then this is the way how to create it in AX. Okay, so it looks easy, but it is not that much easy as it looks, because you need to create a few things for that. And let me quickly go through it, because I have just a few minutes left. So add a relation to the line entity that relates to the header. So I need to modify my simple entities, the two ones that I combine in the composite data entity. So to the line entity, I add relation that points to the header. Then I add the relation to the staging table also. And there are system edit fields that I include also. Then line and header staging, add row ID fields and index. I'm into the index also. Add row ID fields to the index. To the staging also. And after I modified my simple data entities to be able to combine them, I can now click and add the two simple entities in it. So this was too quick, but if you check back to my slides, then it will be more, you can follow it. And after that, you refresh the entity list, and you will see the entity there. And it is a different type, a composite data entity, but it can be found in the same entity list. An alternative way to refresh the data entity list is this one. Let's say a few words about the lessons learned. So one thing is coming from Yammer, from Microsoft, that they have seen that cleanup and the execution history, so execution history cleanup and staging table data cleanup is many times the reason for issues. So there are cleanup jobs that you need to schedule, and that will help you a lot. So I suggest doing that. And Microsoft is working on improvement of the cleanup jobs. So this is again about cleanup, job history. These are the tables that need to be cleaned, but there is a feature in newer versions that you can turn on, and that helps you. So I have two blog posts related to these that I have just shown, and you can go through them. And I also have the errors list there, but some of them are that you cannot use not exist join that I already mentioned. Composite entity can only do full push. So that means that, for example, I was talking about the purchase order, purchase table and purchase line. So every time you will have to export every purchase order and line, you cannot just export the one which you have created in a composite entity. But it's not really true, because with some tricks in the database, you can still solve it. You can add an additional table where you define which data you want to export. So there are tricks with the database to solve this, but in standard, full push is the only way for composite entities. If I would like to highlight that label issues are many times the reasons for issues when you are developing data entities. So you always have to have unique label for your data entities. For example, this is what you can see if your labels are not unique. And there is I had an issue. It is described in the blog, so I will not go deep inside it. Field called isPrimary I wanted to add, and I had issue from it, but it could be solved. This is also, let's go to Azure Data Lake. Okay, so Azure Data Lake is very useful. It's removing the pressure from your production database by so your data and your entity list can be exported to Azure Data Lake, and from there you can run your Power BI reports. You can do integration based on it. So I wanted to mention that it exists and it can be already set up, and it's improved in every version of AX, so you need to learn about it. At the moment, you need to use aggregate measures and aggregate dimensions, or at least with 10.0.10 version of AX. So this is how they look, and in AX, and this you can see here also. So there is the standard VHS warehouse entity aggregate measure, and that's what I'm showing here. And here is the entity store. This is not the same as the data entities, but it's based on the aggregate measures now. And there is a very good blog post on our docs site where it's defined how to do this synchronization, how to set it up. And you can see that we did create in Azure a storage account where it goes. The data can be found in Azure Data Lake after that, and in a CSV format. I can, for example, click VHS warehouse and warehouse, which is here. So VHS warehouse, and inside that warehouses. So that is a CSV file, and also there is a model JSON file which describes in that warehouse file which field is which. So what is the label of the field actually? So this is how it looks. Left side is the CSV file with the data. Right side is the part from the model JSON which describes what field is what in here. So that's all I wanted to talk about. It was many things, and I gave an overview of the data entities, and actually everything that I could find that's related to data entities, or not everything, because you can also automate the import and export, the file-based import and export, but that's so even now I'm at the end of my time, so we didn't have time for that. But I gave an entity demo from the UI, from the developer interface, from OData point of view. I talked about composite data entities, some issues that I faced, and the Azure Data Lake. So thank you very much for your time. It seems we will not have time for the questions here, but please shoot me an email or find me on LinkedIn. I will paste these in the communication also, and hope it was useful, and thank you very much.
Again, Peter, that was a very, very, you covered a lot more ground than